The stop on 79th Street It was an unusually warm spring afternoon in Chicago. The kind of day where the sun kisses the pavement and people finally shed their coats to feel like life is waking up again. On 79th Street, traffic was moving as usual, and the hum of life filled the air. Honking horns, chatter from street corners, the occasional laughter from a group of teenagers. Amid this normalcy, a sleek black Lexus SUV made its way westward, its tinted windows glinting in the sun. Behind the wheel was Dr. Aaliyah Monroe, a 33-year-old neurologist at Chicago General Hospital. She had just finished a grueling 12-hour shift and was heading home to her South Loop apartment. Her afro was tied neatly into a bun, her white coat hung in the back seat, and the playlist of smooth jazz played low in the background. She was tired but content. Saving lives, especially those of underserved black patients, gave her purpose. As she stopped at a red light, she noticed a white patrol car 2 lanes over. At first she didn't think anything of it. Police cars were everywhere in Chicago. But when the light turned green and she continued straight, the car pulled behind her. She glanced into her rearview mirror. The cruiser was tailing her closely, too closely. Her heart sank slightly. She didn't want to jump to conclusions, but years of experience, both personal and collective, made her instincts tighten. She turned right on Halstead, hoping it was coincidence. The patrol car followed. She merged left, so did the cruiser. The lights flickered. Then the siren. "Of course," Aaliyah muttered, pulling over slowly and keeping her hands firmly on the wheel. The officer approached. A white man in his mid-40s, tall, broad-shouldered, with close-cropped blonde hair and mirrored sunglasses. His badge read Officer Ray Dopkins. He didn't bother with pleasantries. "License and registration," he barked. Aaliyah remained calm. "Certainly, officer." "May I ask the reason for the stop?" "Failure to signal when changing lanes," he replied curtly. Aaliyah hadn't failed to signal. She was meticulous when it came to driving. But she didn't argue. She slowly reached for her glove compartment and handed over the documents. Dopkins took them, looked over her license, then peered into the car. "You coming from work?" he asked, his tone tinged with suspicion. "Yes, I'm a doctor. I just finished a shift at Chicago General," she answered calmly. "A doctor?" His eyebrow arched skeptically. "You don't look like a doctor." Aaliyah's lips tightened. "I assure you I am." Dopkins smirked. "What kind of doctor?" "Neurologist." He let out a small, incredulous laugh, as if the very idea was absurd. "You got any drugs in the car?" he asked suddenly. "No," she replied, her voice steady. "Step out of the vehicle." Aaliyah's stomach dropped. "On what grounds?" "Ma'am, step out of the vehicle. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." She hesitated. "I do not consent to a search and I know my rights." Dopkins' jaw clenched. He leaned closer, his face now inches from hers. "You think you're smart, huh? Flashing your credentials, trying to play the race card." "I haven't said a word about race, officer," she said, still sitting inside. He reached for the door handle. "I'm recording this," she said quickly, tapping her phone that was already mounted on her dashboard. That made him pause. "You people always think you're above the law," he growled. "But you're not. Not in my city." Aaliyah didn't flinch. "I pay taxes in this city. I save lives in this city. You protect and serve in it. That's not the same thing." He stepped back, momentarily thrown off by her composure. Then, without another word, he returned to his cruiser. Aaliyah sat in silence, her hands still on the wheel, heart pounding. A few minutes later, Dopkins returned and handed back her license. "I'm letting you go with a warning," he muttered. "Watch your driving." As he walked away, Aaliyah exhaled deeply. Relief washed over her, but so did anger. She had done nothing wrong, yet had to defend her existence, her credentials, her dignity. And she knew this wasn't over. Not yet. As she pulled away, she didn't realize that her video had already gone viral. She had automatically streamed it to her cloud, an old habit after a friend of hers had once been falsely arrested. That habit today would change everything. And Officer Dobkins? He wasn't done either. His pride was bruised, and in his world that meant retaliation. The retaliation begins ***. 3 days had passed since the traffic stop. Dr. Aaliyah Monroe had tried to move on with her life, focusing on her patients, leaning into her work, and spending time with her younger brother Malik, who had come over for dinner that night. But the incident on 79th Street haunted her. She replayed it in her mind over and over again, wondering how it might have ended had she not remained calm, had she not recorded the encounter. She hadn't expected the video to go viral. In fact, she hadn't even known it had been uploaded. A friend had shared it on social media, clipped from her cloud storage where she had automatically synced her dashcam app. Within hours, it had racked up thousands of views. The sight of a confident, black woman in a luxury vehicle being harassed by a sneering white officer struck a nerve. By the end of the second day, local news outlets had picked it up. Commentators called it a textbook example of racial profiling. Activists in Chicago were demanding an internal review. But not everyone was supportive. Aaliyah had received hate messages, calls from blocked numbers, and even a note shoved into her mailbox that read, "Stay in your lane, be **********. She reported it, of course. CPD said they'd look into it. She didn't hold her breath. On the fourth day, while preparing for morning rounds at the hospital, she received a call from the Illinois Medical Licensing Board. "This is Ms. Carter from the IMLB," said the woman on the other end. "We've received an anonymous complaint regarding your prescription practices. It's routine, but we'll need you to come in for a review." Aaliyah felt the blood drain from her face. "A complaint? From who?" "It was filed anonymously," the woman replied. "There's no indication of wrongdoing, but it's a standard procedure. You'll be temporarily suspended from prescribing medication until the investigation concludes." Aaliyah's jaw clenched. This couldn't be real. She had an impeccable record. No patient complaints, no mistakes, nothing. But she had seen this pattern before, character assassination disguised as procedure. After hanging up, she called her mentor, Dr. Lorraine Pitts, a senior physician who had guided Aaliyah since her residency. Lorraine didn't sound surprised. "Let me guess," she said. "That cop? He's not just angry, he's connected. I think he's retaliating. I don't know how, but this is too coordinated," Aaliyah said, pacing her living room. "He's using the system the same way the system protects him," Lorraine said bitterly. "Do you have an attorney?" "Not yet." "Get one. And make noise. If they think they can quietly ruin you, they will. The only defense you have is attention." Aaliyah spent that evening scrolling through messages of support online. Among them was one from a name she didn't recognize, Javier Morales, a former officer turned private investigator. His message was brief. ***, I saw your video. I know that officer. If you want the truth about him, I can help. No charge. Let me know. ***. She hesitated. The last thing she needed was to invite more trouble into her life. But something about the message felt different. She clicked on his profile. He had a history of exposing misconduct in CPD. Several news articles linked him to past whistleblower cases. One involving a cover-up in a shooting, another where he exposed internal corruption in the vice unit. That night she messaged him back. The next day, Aaliyah met Javier at a cafe in Pilsen. He was in his late 30s with olive skin, a shaved head, and a leather folder tucked under one arm. He got straight to the point. "Ray Dobkins is dangerous," he said, sliding into the seat across from her. "You're not the first black professional he's gone after. You're just the first one who didn't back down." Aaliyah blinked. "What do you mean?" He opened his folder and laid out several reports. Internal affairs memos, redacted arrest records, and 2 affidavits from former officers. He's had over 19 citizen complaints in 7 years. Everything from harassment to excessive force. Almost all dismissed internally. But there's a pattern. He targets black drivers with nice cars, assumes they're dealing drugs. Anyone who challenges him ends up facing coincidental issues afterward. Javier flipped to another page. Last year, a black attorney named Denise Walker was stopped by Dobkins. 3 days later she was audited. Then pulled over again, this time by a different officer. She eventually left the city. Aaliyah's stomach turned. How does he get away with it? He's protected. His uncle is Deputy Chief Howard Dobkins. That's why complaints vanish. Aaliyah leaned back. So what now? Javier leaned in. We expose him. But not just with one video. That won't be enough. We need to gather every complaint, every silent victim, and build a case so public they can't ignore it. But what about the medical board? He's already coming after my license. Javier nodded. We can push back on that too. He's trying to discredit you before you can be believed. For the first time in days, Aaliyah felt something other than fear, resolve. I'm in, she said. Back at CPD's 12th District Office, Officer Dobkins sat in his patrol car, watching the video of himself again on his phone. The way Aaliyah had looked him in the eye. The way she didn't flinch. The way the world was siding with her. It made his skin crawl. She thinks she's smarter than me, he muttered. He'd already started making calls. Friends in city administration, people he'd helped out of tight spots over the years. He was planting seeds of doubt about her, saying she was aggressive, mentally unstable, under investigation for drug misuse. He didn't care if it was true. The truth wasn't what mattered. Control was. But what he didn't know was that Javier had already tracked his history back a decade. Back to an incident from his early days on the force. One that had been buried so deep, it hadn't even made it into his official record. Javier had found someone. A former partner. And she was ready to talk.